What are the trajectories? And this is really interesting for us as a researcher to understand the three organized crime groups in Italy today. How they are relevant for understanding the picture of international organized crime. Well, putting some logos on the name, Mafia in Sicily, we call from international to local, with a persisting centralized hierarchical structure. After we go a persistent local approach of 'ndrangheta, framed in a family structure oriented toward international business. The third logo, local approach framed in a competitive groups structure for Camorra in Campania, with a full involvement in international business. If we need to make a comparison today, who is more international in the three organizations, it's strange to say, much more Camorra and 'ndrangheta than Mafia. But we need to understand what has happened in the last 20 years in order to explain what could happen if we will be capable to influence the dynamics of this organization. Understanding these trajectories and relating them also to legislation and law enforcement action against organized crime, it could help to identify what are the main variables which influence dawn and sunset of organized crime, not only in Italy, but everywhere. Oh, sorry. No. This photo is the last Padrino Provenzano, very well known. He was in the 1993 not elected after Totorina. He was the big boss. After he was the head, and this head was representing a typical hierarchical structure of mafia in Sicily. Everybody was expecting, after that he was taken and arrested, there was an explosion of violence, but none occurred. The old law that when you take a boss from the organization, there's a conflict among the other members was not applying in this case. The organization still works without the old bosses, with new bosses, but no conflicts being created. There's been a lot of different actions taken against the others, against Daniele Emanuello and the other people. Lo Piccolo, who was one of the best person in terms of practicing extortion, and just because extortion, as I said before, it's a way in which this organization is linked to the territory, and a lot of money was found, a lot of legitimate business declared they were paying for this extortion money. Sorry. The figures were enormous, 1 billion euro at least for 1 year, and the data which are coming from researchers which have been done in Palermo and in Sicily produce a book on the cost of illegality, explaining how much money is withdrawn for the local development, and it's a cost of organized crime. Going to the second organization, strengthening local and developing international 'ndrangheta. This is really something very new, and 'ndrangheta is today in Italy a good example, and sorry if I say good, in combining local and international under a family structure which still works. The structure is hierarchical, is a family structure, but it follows the migration path family by family, exporting and importing cocaine, and differently from Sicilian mafia, where we had a lot of pentiti, In 'Ndrangheta today, we have a couple, 2, 3, 4 pentiti, no more, which means the structure of the organization is totally different. Camorra, rationalizing competition at local for improving local business. Well, authorities in the last 20 years have paid a lot of attention to Sicilian mafia, neglecting Neapolitan Camorra. Camorra is becoming stronger and stronger, but the interesting phenomenon of Camorra is that these are groups competing one with the other. No more hierarchical structure, there's a competition among different groups, but they agree in exporting, importing drugs and producing extortion at a local level. Once again, as for 'Ndrangheta and Mafia, these are opportunistic organizations which from time to time do different kind of business. But altogether, and this is really relevant, what they do is infiltrating in the legitimate business. And the money which has been produced either in Mafia, in 'Ndrangheta and in Camorra has been invested in the legitimate business in the south part of Italy. Differently from Mafia, here there are a lot of murders, a lot of people killed, and this is really the indicators of the explosion of violence. When you have a competition, you have also violence and homicides, and what does not exist in Sicily now, it was existing 20 years ago, it does exist in Camorra with a lot of homicides. And the system works quite well for them in terms of combining local control of territories and internationalization of the criminal activities and local investment of this money coming from international activities in the legitimate industries. But let me go to the conclusions, which is, according to me, the main point for understanding what is going on in the future. Why we do have 3 different organizations in Italy with the same legislation. One organization, such as the Sicilian Mafia, has been declining. 2 organizations, such as 'Ndrangheta and Camorra, has been booming. What is possible? Why? What has happened in the meantime? Well, there's a very interesting phenomenon that looks local but is not local. Is the participation of the civil society and the private sector in Sicily and not in Calabria and in Campania. There has been a growing relevance of the anti-racketeering organizations. What's happened? State and private bodies started supporting the victims. Association of Entrepreneurs has been reporting those industries which were paying the extortion price in order to, and banning the industries which were paying for the extortion money. The civil society has heavily reacted after the killings of Judge Falcone and Borsellino, and you can explain that still more and more civil society is having a role. Education means promoting well-being, not only well-being, but the knowledge and awareness that this land can't live with mafia. And this has produced a lot of pentiti. Legislation for the state has been protecting this pentiti to report mafia events, to report killings they've done. Prosecutors and investigators have been helped a lot from the declaration of this pentiti. Why these things have not happened 200 kilometers in the north, in Calabria and in Camorra? There are no pentiti, the private industries are paying for the protection money and not reporting. There is no presence of civil society at all. This is really a strange thing, and probably if the decline of organized crime in Sicily is due to the action coming from the civil society, we can't say that there is a decline in Camorra and Ndrangheta. I think we need to say that this is really one of the most relevant issues, and if we want to translate these factors in terms of decline, we need to say something which could be quite clear. We have seen there has been a flexibility or high degree of flexibility of this organization in relation of changing the organizational structure from hierarchical to network in some ways. The criminal activities has been moving from international to local and from local to international, but mainly the level of infiltration in the legitimate business has been connected to extortive activities. And the civil society as having a big role in one of these organizations is not having a role in the other two organizations. Concluding, I need to say that we are in Italy in front of a big structural reform called federalism, which we are making regional the income tax, we are making regional a lot of the different things of the organization of the state. Many people in the South don't want this kind of reform, but I personally believe that if the local citizens will understand that the money they have will go in the pockets of organized crime, they will realize that they cannot be neutral on this issue. In some ways, the big reform and the big changes could be produced by the same citizens in different regions that could help the changes in the development of these regions. I need to say also that the level of developments between South and North Italy is great. There is a lot of difference in terms of employment, unemployment, income, and other things. All these things should be put in should become much more similar than they are today in order to delete differences. But the main action is in the end of the culture. And we go back once again to the old paradigm where there is a relationship between culture and organized crime. These things are changing. I really hope, and usually a researcher should not say hope, but this is part of my being Italian citizen, that in the future, as Sicilia Mafia is declining because of the component and the contribution of the civil society, the other two regions could do also in the same way. Thank you very much.